First add me. Hello everyone, I'm Adrian. I'm going to be talking about database migrations today. And my video was muted. There we go. I always like to say on any stream and every stream, there's always that moment of initial audio malfunction. So we've gotten past that already, and we're ready to move on to the meat of the topic here. Today, we're going to be talking about database schema migration, specifically in using the Hasura CLI and what it does when you're trying to create the schema migrations, what it does for you, what it enables you to do in regards to that. And we'll kind of just see where it goes from there, because I'm going to actually work through creating some migrations. We're going to look at the folder structures, the architecture behind it, and we're going to talk a little bit about the metadata around Hasura and the actual migrations themselves, focusing on the migrations from the SQL perspective, so like the Postgres side of things. And with that, we're just going to get right into it, get started. So let's see here. This is an okay view. I'm still on the screen, but I'm just going to show everybody the code. So here we are on my Are You Kidding Me machine. It's just a standard Mac laptop. This is a terminal. I'm using Zush, which calls to bash whenever necessary. Nothing special here. The reason I'm saying this. It's just a terminal. The one thing that I have done already is install the Hasura CLI. So whenever I type that, boom, there you go. You get some of that nice ASCII art there for Hasura as the ASCII font. And it gives you the basic commands at that root level of the CLI: init, migrate, metadata, console, action, seeds. Well, you can see them. They're there on the screen. I don't need to read the screen, right? Okay, so the next thing after that, this is pretty straightforward. CLI, you type in the command. Now, I have some projects here, just again showing you this to give you the baseline of where I'm starting from. I'm going to make a directory and call it our database API project for today. So no way to mistake that directory with other things. So now we're working in that directory. This is where you'd put things like, let's say you go out and you start a node project. So let's go ahead and put that out there. Boom, there we go. We have a little package.json file. Now, if you have done this, you created your application and you want to begin to work with a database. So let's say there's more Node.js project there already. And you need to have that database be worked on and refactored and iterated on at the same frequency as the application. Because as you deploy the application, let's say you're shipping new code on an hourly basis or a weekly basis or every 2 weeks or every month, whatever that flow is, you want the database to be synchronized in a way that the database and the application are working against the same version, basically. So that's the idea behind schema migrations. It kind of comes from this idea of evolutionary database design, which has been a practice that's existed for quite some time. I just started reading a book and it was dated 2006. And I know it came well after the idea for evolutionary database design. And the idea is just to keep that database synchronized version-wise with the application. And when I say that, I'm speaking from the context of you want the database to have the exact tables, functions, and other things that is expected of the application. So if an application makes a specific call to get records from a table, that table actually exists with the columns that it expects, with the data types, etc. With the Hasura API, you still want the same thing. The key difference is you have a more elaborate, extensive capability to query against that database, with the GraphQL server being in between, right? So you still want all those things synchronized. With the addition, you also want the API to be synchronized with any triggers or actions that the Hasura server would have. To do that, the Hasura CLI is available to help synchronize all of those things. So let's go ahead and create our first migration. Before that, even though we do need to do one thing, say Hasura init. Now this is going to give us a name of the project directory. And I like to call mine, since this is basically where everything is going to go, we'll call it the Hasura migrations example project. Now, I put the package.json in this directory, but if we navigate into this one, you'll notice there's a config, YAML, metadata, migrations, and seeds. Whenever you initialize using the CLI, you get these 4 things, these 4 pieces of collateral. And if we open that up in code, we can take a look. The key thing here is the config.yaml file. It points to the server that you're going to be working against, the endpoint server specifically here, right? So it provides localhost 8080. Now, I have, previous to this webcast, set up a Docker image that is running, or a Docker container that's running for Postgres and Hasura. Now, I'm using version 1.3.2 of Hasura, and I'm on Postgres version 11. No specific reason I'm on version 11. That is the one I chose for unrelated reasons. So I know we're up to 12 with Postgres, so you could be using that one, or you could be using Postgres, whatever version you have set up. Now, these 2 things I've set up previous, like I was saying, I'm using Docker Compose to spin those up, and you can go and get basically the same YAML file I'm using via the docs out on Hasura. That's available, easy to go find it. Just do Docker Compose Hasura, and you'll be able to get that. Also, the exact Docker Compose file that I'm using is actually available under my GitHub, github.com/Adrian. Look for the Adrian's Ecosystem project, and all of that is available in that project, along with a lot of other things like Terraform and some other cool stuff. But we're not talking about that today. The config is set up by default when you run that init command. And we're basically ready at that point, because I'm not going to change any of the default configuration there, to go ahead and create, Hasura migrate, create, and then you would name it. This is going to be my first migration today. Now, there's a lot of switches here. So you can make a decision to pull against the existing database and other things like that. But we're just going to do this basic, no parameters added migration creation. So info, migrations file created, name, first migration today, and then it versions it. 160.269, that's just the version number that it automatically assigns. So now, if we go over here, we look in migrations, we'll see the version number tagged with first migration today. Okay. We'll look in the up, nothing particular. We'll look in the down, nothing particular. So seems straightforward, right? Let's try to write some SQL just off the top of my head here. Create table, or no, let's create a schema. That should be easy enough. Schema, our sample today. Or no, let's do this. Let's give it a better name. What should we name it? Anybody got any ideas? Please interject if you would like to name this something. Oh, I know what. I'm just going to call it we will call it we'll name it after the wonderful little book, The 3-Body Problem. If you haven't read it, check it out. Don Mai suggested this to me. It's an excellent book. Anyway, we're going to call it that. Our schema is now called the 3-body problem. Boom. That's our up. That should create a schema. Okay. Now, with every migration, we want an up migration to create whatever assets we want in the database. And then we want a down migration, which will destroy or remove any of those particular schema elements and assets within the database. So we added the schema one. So now let's get in there and drop that same thing. So drop schema, the 3-body problem. All right, just gonna copy and paste that to make sure I did not mess up any of the key. Okay, so we got that. And now we got Hasura migrate. Just did that so we can look at some of the things. So with Hasura migrate, you have several subcommands underneath that subcommand itself. You have apply, you have create, squash, and status. Now, oh, my head has disappeared on the screen. How hilarious. So if we type Hasura status, we'll get, Hasura migrate status. There we go. So it shows the versions, and you'll see the first migration today is there at the very, very bottom. That's the one that I just created, right? Now, these other ones are ones that I've run in the past. Even though this is a new project, there were other migrations unrelated. So let's run that. Let's run Hasura migrate apply. Boom. All right. So theoretically, that's applied, right? One of the things you can do now, just to check, let's open up the console. You can see some of the other things that I've created previously, but we want to check on the schema. And there it is, 3-body problem. It is in the database. So it's been created. We know it's there. Let's go ahead and see what else we got here. So I'm going to bounce out of that. I just did Control-C to kill that command. Then let's go back to code here. So that's our up and our down. So now we've done that. That's our first migration. Let's create another migration. I'm going to bounce back up here to this migration today. We're going to do second migration today. Here's our new version, new name. Everything should be there. So let's get in here and boom, boom, up. All right, let's do create table. Let's call this the 3rd body. That sounds weird. Let's call this problems. No. Pyramids. We'll call it. And as I always do, let's see here. We'll do an ID, UUID type, and we're going to call it the primary key. Do I need to call it unique? I don't remember the exact syntax all the time, even though I do this every single day. Let's create a name column, call it text, or make it text. And then stamp, we'll call this date. I think that will, it's a pyramid, create the down, so we'll do drop, table, pyramids. I think my SQL is correct, so let's see if it is. We'll do a migrate, apply the new stuff. It looks like it worked. So let's see here. Let's back over here. Oh yeah, whoops. Hasura console. under data. Let's look under our schema. Oh, I made a mistake. So where public, yeah, there, it put the pyramids here, but we don't want the pyramids there. This is a mistake on my behalf. I will claim that mistake. But let's see here. How do we fix that, right? We've got this mistake, but we can fix it. And we're going to fix it with a migration, just to be really on topic here. The idea is as things are refactored, you don't really delete things. Like if you made this mistake here, let's say you, through the application development process, you created a table or you created some columns. And then at some point, the team gets back together and says, you know, we created this table, we wrote some application code against it, but we don't actually need it anymore. We don't need that table for whatever reason, or columns in that table. So what we would do is not delete the table immediately. We would write a new application that would be applied against that table to either remove the table or alter the table so that it's changed next as a part of the step. So then we still have that history of the table having been created, and we kind of know our history. Now, there's benefits to that and there's negatives in the sense that you end up with a ton of migrations over time. And sometimes you might want to flatten those out. So that's something that, you know, the team would need to make a decision about. And at some point you might want to take a snapshot of the database as is and just add all that SQL to one migration and get rid of all the past migrations. We'll talk about that at some point in the future. Hey, Ivan. Yes. Thank you for watching. And yes, I'm going to fix it. And hello, Vish. How are you all? Okay, let's see here. My head keeps disappearing every time I look at my monitor. It cracks me up. All right, so we're going to create a new migration. We're just going to call this fixins. Like so. All right. Get in here, and there's fixins. So for this, let's add this to the up, which is going to be weird. And then we're going to do create table here, the right table. And then give it all the good stuff. Let's actually just copy contents here, like so. Boom. Cool. But we need to add that schema, right? The schema that we have, the three body problem. Now we still need to do the drop for this one specifically. The down of fixins, we'll do drop table, the three body problem. And I think that's right. Does that look right to everybody? I'm gonna read your question and answer your question in just a second, Spencer. Let's hear. So let's apply that. I just want to see if I got all that code written right. Oh, look there. It's always shocking when I write SQL right the first time. Now, oh yeah, I keep doing that. Hasura console. Bring up an active session of it. I'm going to bounce over to data again. Go look at our schema. And there it is. So I'm going to click track. Whoops. Generally speaking, what did I do wrong? Oh, I've messed up something with relation to what? Cannot continue to do. Something's out of sync with the previous one, which is under here. We'll go back to that in a second. Let's see here. Spencer, what was the question? Let's hear. When developing a mobile app, how would you keep the database schema in sync with the app when your old app version is public, but the new version is currently undergoing App Store approval? Okay, so that is when you would want to split the database schema version, have two versions. But ideally, if it's been kept relatively simple, and hopefully the approval process wouldn't take too long, right? Hopefully Apple's not going to sit on it for like 6 months, because that's always a horrible situation. And that can become complicated when managing an autonomous branch, because it can get pretty split between, you know, the Apple Store app version one and the one where you're trying to go with it. But that actually brings up perfectly the next topic, which is, okay, so we have several migration steps. So let's hear, there we go. We've done first migration, we've done second migration, and we've done the fixin' migration, which fixed the other thing that we broke, or that we designed wrong. I designed wrong. So if we want to step back, or let's say we want to just roll back to the beginning, okay, just for an example, that would be your migrate. Does that have the switch? No, it would be Hasura, migrate, apply. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So what we would do is we would do Hasura, migrate, apply, and then we say down. Now, if you want to go all the way, you can say all. What did I do? Oh, I have to spell it right. Hasura, migrate, apply, down, all. And I clearly can't type. Migrate, apply, down, all. Did I get it? Apply failed. I have a migration. Let's look at my migrations again. Migrate status. Oh yeah, I need to wipe those out. So the idea though is you say migrate, apply, you say down. If you write all, it'll roll back all of the migrations. It'll run all of those down steps. Okay, like we have the up.sql and then the down.sql of each migration. It'll run all the down migrations. So this one, let's just go down one. Okay, boom. Actually, let's go down two, right? Oh, that's where I've messed stuff up. Table pyramids does not exist. So we come up with two things here, which are pretty important to point out. One, if you have two versions, one in the App Store and one that you're working against, what you would generally want to do is the App Store version would be rolled to whatever version, okay? Now, if you wanted to keep testing against that, or you needed to make tweaks to it, you would do Hasura migrate apply down to the version that's in the App Store, right? Because theoretically, it would be a previous version. Now, if you needed to iterate on that, that introduces the situation of, like, let's say the Apple came back and said, we don't like something about your database, you need to change X, Y, or Z. Well, then you would create a migration that would take that into account, and it should stay within the line. Ideally, you don't really want to split it if you don't have to. I know within evolutionary database design, they talk about having multiple versions, like split versions of the database. Ideally, don't. That gets super complicated, and often arbitrarily so, because then you eventually have to merge it back into your main branch of code anyway, because the end user is going to have one version of your application no matter what. And that's the version that you really need to work to. So ideally, you have a previous version that you can bounce back to by doing -- down 2 or 1, or how many steps back to the version that's in the App Store, if you need to test or do some tweaks or something like that. But ideally, keep the changes in the main trunk of the path of migrations that you have that is your current development. I hope that answers the question, Spencer. let's see here. Where did we go? So the other thing though that this brought up, which is very important, is I have done a very bad taboo thing in the land of migrations. This should never exist in an up migration. Okay. Because you shouldn't, in a migration, it should only be additive. Like you can tweak columns or you can completely delete columns. Theoretically, you don't really delete tables, part of the practice, because you do run into scenarios like this where you end up with migrations being broken. So let's bounce back though. And I'm going to do this another way. I'm going to show you another way to do migrations. And I'm going to show you how you can do it and actually follow along, not just from a little local demo like I have here, but let's actually use the Hasura cloud. If you go out here, you can start for free and it'll bounce you out to the cloud. So I don't have any projects in here. And the back end I'm going to use is Heroku. I'm not in Italy. What? Interesting. Love it when I get a curveball right in the middle of doing things. So this is my Heroku account. I don't really have anything in there right now. When you sign up for a Hasura cloud account, this is the screen that you get when you don't have any projects yet. But if you have your Heroku already synchronized, you know, auth, basically OAuth connected, you click create project. You can click on try with Heroku, and boom, I now have a setup. So in a few seconds, it's still becoming live. I'll be able to use this as my database that I'm going to work with. And over here, it should show, yep, there's my little app project that has my Postgres database in it. Took care of all that for me, which is pretty slick. So the projects, oh, it's still initializing. Well, in a second that'll come up. Let's go back over. Come on, console, reappear. Oh, wait, closed my console. So here, I'm going to move into my path here. Actually, remove our database API project for today, and then make their online cloud migrations example. Oh yes, Boris, you are correct. And yes, Technical, that is something. I'm actually surprised I wrote that much SQL without having at least one goof even before I got to that point. I don't believe a change has occurred around that with 1.3. I think it's the same that you're probably familiar with from 1.2.2. There we go. Okay. Our online bit is now ready. Note the GraphQL API is available here if you're writing code against that. And then this is, of course, you know, our standard Hasura UI already pointed at the database out there on the web. So now, if I did that, oh, I might actually do it this way. Init a new project. Call it online cloud migrations example. Oh. And again, we have our various folders and other items. And Let's see, we need to, first things first. Let's get this pointed. Let's see if I recall correctly. So I'm 180. So I believe, can we just, oh, there we go. Took a second to copy that. I don't actually know if that's open. I haven't thought about that yet, but we'll see. We're not using the hooks anyway. All right. Now, migrations. Navigate in the migrations directory. We have nothing so far. And let's see if we can do Hasura console from here. Oh, wait. Oh. There we go. So that looks good. Everything's running. Let's bounce out of that though. All right. Now we're going to make a new migration. Hasura migrate, create, first cloud migration. So then let's open that up. Now note in the config, I just pointed it at the cloud offering because that's what we're trying to migrate now. So let's do a create schema. We'll call it, what did we call it? Let's put some casing in there. Logistics, magic. Drop schema. Logistics magic. There we go. Okay. Oops. Let's apply that. See what we get. Applying migrations. Navigate over here. Out of habit, I just refresh that. There's our logistics magic. Now this is live out there on the web in the Hasura cloud running against that Heroku database. We now have a schema. So let's create the next migration. Actually, let's use code for all it's worth here. Bounce at full size. Control tilde gives me that terminal in the IDE. So then we're going to say Hasura migrate, create the next migration. And also to note, now if I run status, migrate status, we'll actually see that the first cloud migration is present. It is present in the database, etc. So that's one that's brand new from scratch in the cloud. No extra bits sitting there, nothing existing, just from scratch. And we've got this much up and running already. So let's start to create some stuff here. Create table. We'll do our first table. Because somebody's going to want to name a table that way, right? ID, unique identifier. We're going to make it primary key. We'll do name again, text, and stamp. We'll date it. What else can we do? Let's do a counter int. Then let's do a description. We'll make that text actually, and this will be, let's go with varchar up here. That looks like a decent little table. And drop table. Our first table. Okay. And let's migrate that. And then go confirm. I'll give it a second. Oh, I did the same exact mistake that I did a minute ago. I created a schema and then I forgot to put the schema before the table name. So using the note that Boris made that you need to create the table in the down SQL to be able to terminate it, etc. Let's actually implement that change more accurately this time. Oh, I'm typing the command in the wrong window. Right, so we have up, down. We'll do Hasura, migrate, create, create. Basically doing the same thing over again. There we go. And then here, in the up, let's do drop table. Or actually, let's not drop it. Let's just create the right one. Create table. What is it? Logistics magic dot this. Actually, I probably need a. Right? Logistics. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to type that out because I will do it wrong and then sit here and have to troubleshoot that. All right. So that then should be in the correct place. There we go. Some turn on tracking. And pop it over there. And here is all the bits. Now, this is live in the cloud. Let's close this. Or no, leave this open. But I'm going to close that. And then let's actually do another type of migration. Let's do Hasura console. There we go. Notice it's bringing it up on localhost, but these are what we've been working against because it's actually working against this point, but it's brought up a local instance of the Hasura console to work with so we can create a migration in the console. Okay, pretty awesome. Let's pick our logistics magic schema and then just create a table. Call this another table. ID, UUID, in random UUID, unique, have a name. Actually, let's call this description or details. And what do we got? JSON type. Yeah, let's do the user. Oh wait, we'll do JSON B. JSON B. Yeah, that's the actual type. Let's do that. And then I'm not going to do a unique constraint on it because it'll create the index on that JSON data. Hey Ben, how are you? Thank you for joining us today. Hope you're having a wonderful day. All right, so ID details. Then what else should we add? Let's add a stamp again. Date. We'll do now. So pretty nice to have those functions pop up like that, right? And technically, it could be unique because we shouldn't be adding things at the exact same millisecond of the day. But let's do that. That seems fun. I'm doing pretty well. I'm here doing a live stream, and I'm not even messing the code up that much. That's pretty marvelous. And I'm doing all this live. I love doing stuff live, and here I am doing what I love. So pretty good day, pretty good day. And I've also been drinking some delicious Stumptown coffee in my Stumptown mug that has the custom artwork on it. And that's tasty. And because, you know, I like to make sure I'm fueled up correctly, I have this weird plant-based energy drink. So I'm doing really well today. And we almost have our second table, and we've already covered great ground on how to write manual migrations, schema migrations, just writing the SQL. And now I'm in here doing this with the user interface, which is pretty awesome to be able to do this. So let's add a comment. This is a sample table for creation via schema migration. Migration using the interface. How cool. I'm going to add the table, I think. Do I want to add anything else? I got my unique keys, ID and stamp. I have my actual primary key designated to ID. It's using a generated random UUID, so I know it'll always be unique. Of course, yes, someone can pedantically argue you may have a conflict in 1 millennia, sometime in some century, but it's unique. I'm going to create that table, so it's working. It should pop up over here in just a second. There it is, another table. So I have stuff, right? Now, let's add a row real quick. We're going to say name, John, Allen, Susan, McDaniels, Peterson, Viktorov. That's a pretty good unique name. And I'm not going to leave the stamp. Notice these are shadowed out because they have functions that will autofill them, right? If I clicked on it, I could overwrite that, but I'm going to use the default, which is the function. So I'll get a UUID and I'll get a date stamp. Boom. Uh-oh. Oh, that's right. It needed to be a JSON object. So let's hand code some JSON. That's a great challenge of the day. Let's say name. Yeah. Oh, look at that. See, you got to see the validation of the interface. That's freaking awesome. So I'm going to go over here and then let's see what this looks like. Oh, it looks like that. So we have a row of data, one row of data. Now, schema migrations, however, don't include data, right? Let's go back here and look at what I see. Yep. There is what has been created in the console. There's the table and everything, right? Pretty awesome. There's the down drop table. It's in that schema. Of course, it's not going to mess it up like I did because I missed the schema earlier. Create extension if not exist PG crypto. That's interesting. I didn't even think about it needing to do that. There's our function, generate random UUID. There's stamp set to now. And then our primary key, unique, and comment on table. So all that good stuff. This is E. I don't think I've ever manually written a comment for a table in the actual SQL. That's pretty fascinating. So let's see here. Let's talk about what we've covered so far, because we've actually covered a lot of ground. Especially if anybody is new to schema migrations, this can get kind of it's a simple concept, but it can be easily overwhelming because of the moving pieces that are happening. So I started off just doing some schema migrations just locally against a Docker Compose, Docker container running Hasura environment, right? So Postgres, Hasura, just locally, pretty simple to do, starts up in like 2 seconds. You can go out and get that Docker Compose YAML and other collateral out there in the docs to run that environment if you want to do that. And then, of course, you can go out and you can create a free cloud account. Emphasis, it is free, like basic free account, basic X number of databases you can run at Heroku. I believe it's like 5 databases you can get for free. So once you use those 5, then I guess you have to pay for one. I'm not super familiar with the Heroku pricing pattern, but it gives you plenty of stuff to work on, to try out migrations, to test moving from like dev to production type of movement and things like that, how to repoint your migrations from your local environment by editing the config, right? Like we did here. So that's an important thing to note and know how to do. So as you move through these steps, you can automate different configurations for the different environments or however you want to do that. Then we went through a number of actual creating migrations and then applying those, and then applying a down movement to move back to a previous migration to basically have environments that might be at different stages of development, right? So we've done all that. And we've also used the Hasura console, the Hasura console to build one of the schema migrations. Or yeah, we've done one so far. And we've seen that. We've seen what Sequit creates, and it creates up and down, puts it in a folder, just like the other ones. Now I'm still running here, so let's move on and see what happens with some additional stuff. You'll also note I added this data here in the console. So that data is in the database, but it's not put in the migrations because the migrations are only for the schema at their core. You can use other features like seeds and some of the other advanced capabilities around that to seed data, like sample data to test with and things like that. You can also initiate execution of SQL to do pretty much anything you want to in the database, post migrations and things like that. But it should really be set up within the idea that the schema migrations are a singular step or singular part of an overall continuous integration and deployment pipeline or processing steps, depending on how you look at it and how you have that architecture set up. So definitely have data. In most scenarios, you'll want your data, your baseline data, like let's say you have a lot of enumeration type data in tables. That's just a list of stuff, like the list of the states of the United States. That's a perfect example. You would want that populated, not specifically within the schema itself, even though it's almost like part of the schema. You would want that populated as an initial baseline bit of data dumped into the database after your schema is created. So that's something important to note. In addition, this may seem quite obvious, but the idea of putting the data in post schema is you want whatever the active schema is to have the data be representative of what that is. You don't want disparities between those two things. And putting the data in post schema migrations instead of during schema migrations ensures that if you do have any out of sync or out of alignment data, it would break the process and you'd have to fix that. So you ensure by following that practice that your data is good for what the actual database is. So again, that might seem obvious, but sometimes it's important to state that stuff because it just gets it in your mind and helps you keep it active as you work through these different problems that you're working on. All right, let's do a modify. Take a look at that. Let's add a column. This is new column. And we'll make it a Boolean. Don't make it a unique. We're not going to make it nullable. Default value is going to be true. We'll save that. And then let's actually remove the, no, wait, I like that column. Let's remove the stamp. Let's remove that like so. Stamp. Show how it works behind it. Yeah, so the idea behind writing those manually, for one, if there's ever something that's like kind of outside of the scope of what the console does, you would need to write that manually. But for most things, what did I do? Did I break something? Yes, I did. Oh, I'm talking through that. I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, so the idea with manual migrations is sometimes you would need to write manual migrations because you would need to touch on some functionality that just simply doesn't exist in the console. But the overall idea is that with the console, you can do a lot of the standard table creation, the connection of relationships. My lighting is getting really bad. Anyway, all those relationships, all the connections. This is driving me nuts. Hold on, I'm going to fix it. But yeah, all those things can generally be done in the console and should be done in the console. Probably, because then you just kind of remove the possible errors with syntax when you're writing it out manually. You don't have to worry about running into those problems. But it's there as an option. And it's there definitely to ensure that you're not missing any capabilities of the system itself. Like I've said, sometimes you definitely need to write certain functionality, make certain calls to certain functions that just might not be available in the console or might not easily be able to be created in the console or something like that. So the option to write the up or down SQL code yourself is always there and ensures that you have that full access to the SQL itself, and write whatever you need to for that stuff. So migration is like the difference between two states of the schema. The up file is how to apply those, and the down file is like how to remove those changes. Correct. So you get very clean version 1 to version 2 to version 3. Oh, got to go back to version 2. You get clean movement between any part of the schema at any point in application development. Now, in the future, I'm very keen and will be getting some guests here on the show to talk about some of the event streaming and event modeling and some of the CQRS paradigms. CQRS paradigms. I don't know if I said that real clearly. Yes, Ben, that's a great way to put it. It is like Git for the schema. In addition to the fact that you would put this in your repo in Git, so it's kind of like you get dual enforcement of your versioned iterations of your database. It's in Git and it's in the migrations. So there are some arguments in the world, imagine that, about how to store data in a database and how to do migrations or not do migrations, but manage that data within a database. And there's some discussion in the event sourcing, event modeling world, event streaming world that you kind of version and iterate the data, not particularly the database. So I don't want to get into that, but stay tuned. Be sure to follow here on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube, wherever that button is up there somewhere. And we'll have an episode on that in the near future with some guests that know that topic very, very well, much more so than me. And it should be really interesting. I'm very curious about how they manage the state of the data schema, but also just the data itself. Like, how do you always manage that in the data? Some of it is like the read-only constructs of like distributed databases or whatever, but it'll be interesting, and we'll see how to apply that in our particular use of GraphQL and Hasura, which should be pretty cool. So again, follow, subscribe, or follow button over there, subscribe over there, depending on what platform. And we will have that in the very near future. If anybody else has any questions, happy to hang out and answer some more questions. That's mostly. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention this one thing. When I did that delete, whoops, where did it go? I tried to delete, or I did delete. This is new column. Yeah, I deleted the stamp, and it threw an error up, but it deleted it. And I'm just going to create a new field called new stamp and actually put in the date. And then we'll put in the now function again, not nullable. And it will be unique. We'll add the index to that because it's a small enough field. It kind of makes sense to index it in a way. I'm sure we could do some cool database tricks with it. So all of those, we bounce over to here. You can see all of those new migrations. Each migration has been created per changes to the table, right? So one of them was the alter table, add a column, right? And then the next one was alter table, drop a column. Then there was alter table, add another column with a new stamp, right? So as you move through those iterations in the console, it'll do a migration step for each one of those things, which is super useful to have it cleanly built out. It follows good practice around schema migrations, which is pretty awesome. Ben, I'm super glad that you were here, and I'm even more stoked that this was helpful for you. I always hope that anytime I'm rambling on the internet, that it is helpful to at least somebody. So yeah, that is the session on migrations. And again, in the future, we'll be talking a lot more about migrations, about actions, remote schemas, all sorts of things here on Twitch and on YouTube. And we're going to have guests. We're going to have additional topics like I was just saying. But if there's also anything you want to hear about, if there's a topic you want to hear about, if you want me to go try to get a guest, I'll go talk to anybody. Almost anybody. But yeah, I'll go find people that you want to hear from about end-to-end tests or migrations or how to set up your database schema or how to do data modeling, whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to hear about, whatever you're curious about, and whatever you're trying to get done with your applications, let me know, and I will make sure to cater what we bring to you here on the Hasura channel so that it is most useful to what everybody is working on. So with that, be sure to reach out to me and let me know. I'm going to use this cool feature. I'm available. Oh, that's docs and blogs on the Hasura site. Check that out. The website, of course, is this. And then I am available on Twitter, GitHub at Adrian. And on Twitch and YouTube, I'm also on those channels myself as Thrashing Code. And I blog a bunch, compositecode.blog. So if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, ideas about anything you'd like to see here on the show, let me know, and I will get that lined up for you and put on the schedule. So see everybody out there. If you have any more questions, I will hang out for just about a minute more and get those answered. End-to-end tests with migrations. That almost seems like a question, Boris. What do you mean end-to-end test with migrations? Test of the migrations or like regression tests of the changes? I'm gonna kind of go with that one as is. So if you have end-to-end tests or regression tests of the database and the application, so in some practices, what people like to do is they like to have not particularly unit tests, but integration tests in the application that ensures that the pieces of the database that they want are set up the way they want, and the columns are the data types that they want and stuff like that. So some people like to do that, and that can be automated to some degree, which is nice, instead of needing to write out each of those integration tests. That's from the code perspective. I'm not always a fan of that because I feel like it breaches the separation of concerns. It creates an environment where a lot of your tests are dependent across boundaries, and it it creates a scenario where you're needing to basically manage multiple tiers of an application that is not your application. So I'm not always a big fan of that. Update mutations with nested updates. Technical. I'm presuming as a topic unto itself. We could definitely do that. We will definitely have a. I'm going to put that. I'm copying it from this comment. Any plans to showcase update mutations with nested updates? Yes, we'll do a show on that. We'll talk a lot more about mutations and the GraphQL side of things specifically in the near future. We hope to, the team is going to put together a schedule that's more than just a schedule. We're not just going to have just the times up there. We're going to actually write up some of the descriptions and the key topics that we want to talk about. And hopefully we can even, if we get a lot of ideas starting to come in, we can maybe formalize it in some way, and you can get them into a queue and just add them almost like an issue on a GitHub repo or something like that. That actually might be a perfect way to do it. But we'll set it up as things come in. But yeah, I have just copied that into our queue of things to do. So we will have an update. I mean, we will have a session in the next couple of weeks where we'll talk about update mutations, nested updates, things like that in relation to GraphQL, and kind of talk through what that's doing on the Postgres side, et cetera, on through the application. I know we probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks also plan to have an episode on React and some of those things. I also want to have one on Vue.js, talk about how to use GraphQL against the Asura database and some of the other capabilities from React and Vue.js and those things, and efficient ways to connect against the Hasura API. So that's something else you can look forward to in the very near future. E2E, which depends on clue about Haskell. Oh, wicked! That would be super cool, Boris. Yes, putting that one in the queue too. So let's hear. Haskell code walkthrough. Can't spell. I'm typing a note and I'm telling you I'm not spelling right. I spell perfectly. Yes, so we'll do that. And Ivan, sorry I called you Ian earlier. I can't read either, I guess. So Ivan, yes, we will definitely be doing some React Native stuff. We have some of that getting queued up right now. Myself and some others have been hacking on that, putting together some demo code for that. So yeah, no worries, technical. I feel like I'm 30 seconds behind, even though I'm the one making the stream. So that's fine. I do have my monitor. I have like a multi-screen thing that I do this with to try to make sure I'm keeping up as best as possible as I talk to everybody. And I'm watching the stream as it's 30-second delayed too. So thank goodness I have gigabit internet. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do that either. So let's hear. We got Haskell code walkthrough of the Hasura code base. Definitely going to look into that. I got a few people on the team that may want to come and talk very intimately about the code itself with you, because we have a lot of love for Haskell, that's for sure. And React Native, we will definitely, that's definitely going to be on the plate very soon. Oh, this is great. And then the other thing, oh yeah, we're going to do a showcase of update mutations with nested updates. I like that. I like that a lot. So everybody, thank you massively for coming and watching the show today. Hopefully, Ben and everybody else, this has been super useful to all of you. We will see you next time. So every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. PT is our plan at this point. We may add additional times in the future. So follow on the Twitch channel. We'll get the schedule put up there. We'll get more descriptions and we'll get times out ASAP in relation to get that Haskell code walkthrough, the React Native, and the update mutations with nested updates out real soon. So everybody, Boris, Ivan, Technical, Ben, cheers. Y'all have a great one, and I'll catch you next time.